This podcast was produced by OAR Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to Headscarves and Good Yarns with me, Amal. The show is all about talking about race, diversity and everything in between, all in the hopes of empowering a more empathetic Aotearoa. We talk about all these huge life things through the lens of people's lives and stories. I hope every yarn you take a wee gem from it and expands your heart and mind just a wee bit more. Kia ora, assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Headscarves and Good Yarns. This episode, it's going to be a real one. Let's just say that. I think all of the episodes are real. Let's be real about that. But I think whenever we're talking about bodies, there's like another level of intimacy about it because, you know, it's something that we all have, right? We all have our own bodies that we live in every single day. We all have our own thoughts and feelings about our own bodies. But we also have a lot of thoughts and feelings about other people's bodies. And it's not something that we're very open, honest, or frank about if we're being really real about it. I mean, you know, people are very bold in the things they say about bodies, whether it's their own or other people's bodies online. And it's like, you know that these people are out here living, existing, doing their thing, living their life. You know, you probably most likely work with these people. You call these people friends. You know, these people are your family. You know what I mean? And it's not like these people will come out and say these things IRL. And so that's what I'm saying when, you know, this episode is going to be really real in the sense that we are going to be talking about the uncomfortable and we will be acknowledging the things that it's often seen in like the comment section of a stuff article or scrolling on TikTok or on Reddit. But, you know, we're not really out here having conversations like that. And today I really wanted to talk about bodies, body positivity, the body thinness trend that's coming in these days. And I think, you know, it's a good opportunity to be talking about, you know, what this all means now, because I think, you know, the past couple of years it's been a huge push for body positivity, and then now with this like Ozempic trend and the Y2K fashion being back in and all of these celebrities just losing weight, you know, I think the quote-unquote body positivity movement is wavering, and it kind of leaves me with the question of like, well, was it really that real to begin with, and what was it even grounded in for it to kind of, you know, for its foundation to be so shaky in the face of like this Ozempic trend that's happening at the moment. And the reason why I want to talk about this is I feel like it's happening more and more so these days. I think this conversation would have been relevant a year ago, even 2 years ago, because, you know, the Y2K trend has been around for, you know, several years now. But I feel like even more so these days that more and more celebrities are losing weight. You know, recently it's been Barbie Ferreira. I'm pretty sure that's how you say her last name. And Lizzo, and I don't know, Oprah, and like there's just, the list honestly goes on and on and on. And the use of Ozempic and other medications that are, you know, work in a similar way to Ozempic, the way that they, you know, the demand to have these medications is so high, it's gotten to the point where, like, you know, it's it's hard for people who genuinely need that medication to get prescribed on that, and to get a consistent supply because it's so in use. And I feel like the body positivity movement has kind of formed this other face. I think not directly in response to what's been happening, but I think this new face of the body positivity movement is definitely been brewing because of the changing environment the past couple of years. And I've noticed that there's this corridor at the moment about health, and on the surface, it seems great. It seems amazing, that we are talking about health and people moving your bodies and finding movement that you like, and all of this stuff that just sounds not attached to body size at all, but just kind of centered around health. But the more you dive into it, the more you're like, oh, actually, this is feeling like that same language coming through again, but just being spoken about in a different way. And, the more you get into it, it becomes clearer and clearer that health is actually, that health equates to thinness. And I think, and it's an easier pill to swallow because it, comes under the guise of health, but it actually is, it is quite, it's a restricted view of health, which makes it toxic. And then so I feel like it's hard to escape. It's everywhere. And while I was doing research for this episode, there was like this interview of Kelly Osbourne. Homegirl always says some really interesting things. But anyways, there was it was like a red carpet interview, and she was talking about, her recent weight loss, and she was saying, we all want this, this is something that we all want, because she's talking about, Ozempic, and then just goes on to say, we all want it, but people hate it if people hate on it because they can't afford it. Something along those lines. I'm not going to quote her directly word for word, but, something along those lines of you're only hating because you can't afford it because we all want this. And, I think, other than the fact that there's a lot of accessibility issues when it comes to health, and it has nothing, it's very little to do with self-discipline or, putting it back on the self, which is, we as a society, we like to talk about body size as if it's all to do with who you are as a person, your sense of morality and your sense of discipline. There's a lot of accessibility issues there. But one thing that I thought that was really interesting that Kelly said quite directly, which is, well, this is something that we all want. And with the resurgence of thinness, that is this trend of thinness that is happening at the moment, it does make me think, there may be some truth to that. And then also while I was doing research for this episode, I came across this TikTok influencer, and I think my algorithm did not show me who this person is. But this person is called Liv Schmidt, and they had their whole account and their whole thing on TikTok was about being a thin person, and they would make content like habits of a skinny person and all of that kind of stuff. And I thought that was it was just really bold. It was just straight up yeah, I'm thin. And they would have content of them wearing really low-rise things and really cute crop tops, but, you know, they'd have captions of like, the best thing about this fit is my flat stomach. Like, it was just very upfront. And, you know, I think for me, like, something like language like that and being so upfront like that is, I don't know, it's pretty jarring. I read that and I was like, oh, whoa, this is a lot. And I think it's a lot because it's so direct. And you'd think that in this, you know, body positivity movement, that maybe the response to it would be, you know, yes, queen, like, you look so good. But, you know, it's not just because you have a flat stomach, like, you know, and the implication there being that anyone could wear that outfit and it would, you know, look great. It doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, the requirement of wearing an outfit like that shouldn't be having a flat stomach. But the response to her content was always like overwhelmingly positive and like, yes, this is amazing. This is, you know, this is what we should all be like. This is what health is like. And again, that language of this is healthy and this is what health looks like really came through quite strongly in response to Liv Schmidt's content. You know, what I was saying before about this new restricted view of health kind of being platformed. And then eventually her page got taken down because, you know, it was outlined as being harmful and outlined as being unhealthy and potentially you know, encouraging behavior that would, influencing behavior that meant that, you know, people could have that flat stomach. And so the page got shut down and Liv recreated a new page. And the tagline for this new page, which I think really captures kind of maybe where we're at right now. And I'm not saying that everyone is at this place, but the fact that this is the caption, I'm like, this is really what I'm seeing at the moment. And the caption is, it's not a sin to be thin, helping fight obesity one person at a time. And I think that tagline really speaks to kind of where we're at as a collective right now, because if you think back on it, like, you know, in the times that I grew up, I mean, I think my parents did a really good job of, like, you know, we didn't really buy magazines or anything like that. I think they did a really good job of trying to, like, protect us kids from outside influence and just being able to, I don't know, focus on living our own lives. I think especially when it came to like celebrity and like the influence of celebrities, I think my parents did a really good job of like sheltering us from that. But if you look at newspaper clippings and magazine articles from that time of the early 2000s, it was honestly, it was shocking, you know. It would be like someone who's just perfectly healthy, and paparazzi would get really like invasive photos and be like, you know, look at how much weight they've gained and look at their cellulite, and the pressure was insane. And as I was saying before, because, you know, my parents tried their best to shelter us from this celebritydom, I didn't at the time, like when I was growing up and I was a little human, I didn't read articles like that and I didn't see the headlines. But even then, the message was so loud and clear that I understood exactly what the memo was growing up. And I understood that, you know, to be to live in a bigger body was to be, it was a huge moral failing. I think that's the message that was like quite loud and clear then. And like to be fat was to be a very bad thing. And I think it was so extreme that it got to the point where it was not even like to be fat is to be bad. Like to have any kind of role was a bad thing. To have any kind of cellulite was a bad thing. To have, like, there was just this perfection around bodies that was expected. And I think, when that is the expectation and the standard, it's not sustainable at all. And so I think, then we had this body positivity movement where it was like realness was being pushed, and it was about real bodies and real beauty and, embracing the fact that not everyone on this earth is going to be a size 0, and it was about loving exactly who you are, and it kind of ushered this like new era of body positivity and body diversity, and we'll get to it in a bit, but I feel like this movement took off so much. Capitalism kind of got its claws in it, but that's something that I will get into in a second. And then now it feels like, this Liv Schmidt's caption or their tagline for their account kind of highlights the phase that we're in at the moment, which is it's not a sin to be thin, and helping fight obesity. And now we've collectively all obsessed with health, and I feel like the body positivity movement is changing. And one of the reasons why I think that the body positivity movement is changing a lot is it was initially so, like, it, I think the beginnings of this body positivity movement had really good intentions, but then unfortunately it kind of got capitalized. And I think when that happens, it's very easy to, like, it's a slippery slope for low impact but easy tick boxes of like performative activism. Like with Lizzo, with her, skim range for people who live in bigger bodies, or is accommodating for people who live in bigger bodies. But I mean, you're buying something that is, I don't know exactly how much it is, but I'm sure it's not cheap. You're buying something to smooth and thin out your body. I don't know. I think the whole body positivity movement very much got capitalized. And I think when something gets capitalized a lot, it's less about activism. And, when it gets to that level where it's just kind of, it's so easy to sell. Because if you think of those really big corporations and those businesses and those huge institutions and how easy it was for them, and is, because it's still happening, to sell body positivity. When something is that easy, where is that level of engagement? And for me, the way that I think about activism, or one of the ways that I think about activism, because I think you can look at it with lots of different lenses, is that if your activism does not allow you to think about how is it that I treat my community, how is it that I show up for my communities, then as watered down activism. And I think that if the body positivity movement, it was so capitalized that, on the surface it seemed like, oh my gosh, we're making like mad social progress. But, if that social progress is actually very capitalized and driven by money, then it's so easy to disappear, which is what I feel like is happening now with the rise of Ozempic and the rise of Y2K fashion, that early 2000s fashion where, it really encouraged thinner bodies. And now with all of these celebrities losing weight, I don't know, I can see how this kind of social progress is just disappearing, just like that. And I think another era that I kind of forgot to insert in that body positivity movement, it's kind of weird that we have body trends, hey? But there was that era where it was like really quite the trend and quite, the attractive thing at the time, which was to be like slim, thick, and to have mad curves, but to still be like have proportions that meant that you still had that like, that flat stomach, but you were a curvy girl, curvy woman. And I think when we just like oscillate between extremeness and when we oscillate between trends like that, because now, early 2000s, it was very much about, being as thin as possible. And then we kind of went to like the slim tick era, and now we're going back to the thinness. And I think even if you don't keep up with the Kardashians and you don't, play with them like that, I think you look to them and how they dress and what their bodies look like, and it kind of sets the tone for like what is happening. And so when all the Kardashians started to lose weight and like kind of lost their curves and like reverse their BBLs and stuff, I was like, oh, I think, this era of thinness is for real coming back. And when you think about, quote unquote body trends like that, it's so extreme, like the way that we have to take substances or literally go under the knife to have a certain body type, regardless of, what the trend is. When it was the slim thick, people were getting BBLs and doing, having lipo, adjustment surgeries. And then now that we're in this body thinness, people are literally taking drugs and medication to be thinner. I think this extremeness is so not healthy, because instead of like fostering more empathy and curiosity for why is it that this is a trend at the moment, for just taking stock of like, collectively to be like, what the hell is going on with bodies? And why is that trending at the moment? It just kind of encourages more vanity in the sense that it's like, okay, I'm not even going to think about what's best for me, what's healthy for me, and I just need to try to fit myself into what's popular at the moment. And the means that which people will strive to achieve that is mad crazy. And I think this extremeness is insane. And I think because as a society, we tend to like, swing so much to one side that, the pendulum will only just swing back again to the other side. And so, are we just like, I think it's a lot, and we need to stop normalizing using substances to have a certain body type, just because, it's a trend. And I want to put a disclaimer out there that there will be a diversity of body types, and I don't want to shame anyone for being any particular size. I think if you think about it, there's some people who are just naturally quite thin, and that is their body type. And I know that there are things to celebrate, but also things that are a struggle with being thin, like there is with any other body type. And so I don't want to shame a particular size with this episode at all. I just want to put that disclaimer out there that, naturally, we all have different body sizes and types and things that are just so out of our control as well. And I also want to put a disclaimer out there that it's okay for bodies to change as well. I think, it's, I'm sure there are people out there who have been the same size for their whole entire life, but that's not the case for everyone. And bodies change, and I think we should normalize that being okay, as long as that change is what is what is healthy to that person in that moment. And when I say healthy, I'm not talking about Liv Schmidt's definition of, healthy and, helping fight obesity. I'm talking about true health, what makes that person feel good and feel mobile and to feel like their body can do all the things that they want it to do, and, to eat good, to treat your body, with the nutrients that it needs, not this like very shallow idea of health that that is just, restricted to being thin. Because, if you think about it, that is a very narrow way of thinking about health. And just because you're a particular size, it doesn't mean automatically that you are healthy. I think health encompasses way more than that. But with this new language around all this interest in helping fight obesity and this interest in wanting people to be healthy, I think it's kind of brought back this trend of thinness, and I think it's something that we do need to think about. I think we need to think about what this new trend says about, quote unquote body positivity or quote unquote body neutrality, what it means about health, and what it means about quote unquote abandoning the movement. I think, with all of these celebrities losing weight, there's, some of these celebrities have gotten some like pushback on that with, well, how dare you lose weight when you are the idea of what it means to be, what it means to be okay with living in a bigger body. Like, for example, this with Lizzo losing weight, people are like, oh, well, she's not allowed to do that. She can't do that because she was kind of, a really loud advocate and spokesperson for the fat liberation movement and the body positivity movement. And I feel like, as I was saying before, people do change body size. And I think it feels like that's unfair to Lizzo to say you can't ever change body size at all, because otherwise you're abandoning the movement. And so I think it's really important that we talk about the implications of this new trend that's happening at the moment, because if we don't talk about the implications of it, then I don't know where we'll, as a society, where we'll land, and what it means for people and the impacts on their health. Because I think there are a lot of, particularly for example, there's a lot of millennial women who grew up in a time where it was like, it is best to be thin. It's best to have a flat stomach. It's best to have no rolls, even when you're sitting down. Like there was a lot of expectations of what a body should look like. And so it encouraged all of this extreme behavior around dieting, yo-yo dieting, using substances to, live in a smaller body. And, the repercussions of doing that to your body are being felt, And so I think I've just noticed, especially, whether it's in person, anecdotally in my own circles, and also online, I'm just seeing a lot of millennial women kind of reflecting on that time and being like, that was so not healthy, and still dealing with the after effects of dieting that much and being that extreme. And so I think if we don't talk about the implications of what this the new trends around bodies are, who knows what damage people will do to their bodies and what extreme ends they'll go to achieve whatever the trend is at the moment. And that's something that I think we really do need to talk about. And I kind of want to talk about the implications of this trend by starting with talking about myself. And this is something that I have spoken about on the show before, about, how the past perhaps 5 years I've just, been gaining weight, and now I live in a bigger body than what I used to, say, I don't know, like 6 years ago. And, it's insane because sometimes I have clothes from, what I would wear 6 years ago at the back of my closet, and there's just no way that I could fit into it now. And so, yes, my body has changed drastically. And I think living in a bigger body and being a fat person, it really has challenged me in the sense of, well, what does body positivity / body neutrality mean to me? Because, I think, now that I live in a bigger body, I can, I know that we still live in a very fatphobic world and not a very inclusive world as well. And I really have to check myself whenever I have thoughts about wanting to live in a smaller body. And this new trend of like talking about body positivity as health, when it's a very restricted view of health, that, as I was saying before, that corridor, it's a very easy pill to swallow. And it's something that because it's such an easy pill to swallow, it is a pill that I have just swallowed without any resistance or thought. And when I say swallowed, I mean, not physically. Me, how wild I love to run with my metaphors, but it's because it's such an easy pill to swallow. It's something that I have absorbed, and let's just say it's never led to any healthy or productive change in my life. And every single time that this happens, I really have to be so real with myself about what is health, what is it actually, what does it mean, and how can, and within that definition of health, how is it that I want to show up for myself, and how is it that I want to show up so I can live, God willing, a healthy life. And it's not easy, I think, because as a society, even though it seems like we've made mad social progress, and with the body neutrality / body positivity movement, and it seems like we've made mad social progress because there seems to be a lot of advocates for, it's okay to live in a bigger body. The fact that it's just so easy to swallow this pill, and there's like very little resistance to being sucked into the trend around bodies these days. I think as a society, we actually haven't really talked about, what it means to be healthy, and what it, the implications of this trend, and how it harms everyone regardless of what body size you are. And I also think that, not only do we, does it not only relate to health, but it's also just about, how we look at fat people and how we live and move in this world. I was scrolling on TikTok the other day, and everyone was kind of responding to Barbie's weight loss, and there were so many comments around, my gosh, she is so beautiful now, and she's the most beautiful woman now, and personally, to me, she's always been that girl. She's always been absolutely stunning regardless of body size. And people were talking about how it's going to be a lot easier for her to get roles in Hollywood, and I think even Barbie for herself was kind of talking about her body size, and how that was one of the reasons why she left the show Euphoria, because I don't want to quote her word for word, but it was something along the lines of she was just tired of being the fat friend. Because I haven't watched the show, so this is just from listening to podcasts and doing research, but from what Barbie was saying, there wasn't going to be much of a plot line or a character development for her, and so it was about time that she left because she just didn't want to be reduced to being the fat friend. And so, yes, it's about health, but there's also so many other things that seep into, how we view fat people, and it does impact job prospects. It impacts desirability. It talks about health, morality. There are so many ways in which, the way that fat people just move through this world, and, automatically automatically are seen in a particular way, and a lot of things are assumed about fat people for just being fat people. And I think when the reality of the fact is that fat people will will always exist. They have existed, are existing now, will exist in the future. And I think we need to, get real and talk about, what it truly means to be healthy and how we can get to the point as a society where if, we're talking about fat people, it's just merely a neutral body descriptor and has, and it means nothing else about who that person is and how they move in this world. And that's just not the case. And I think the more and more that I've been reflecting on this for myself is that the way that we talk about bodies now, it does harm everyone, regardless of what size you are. And, there are the unique struggles with being a fat person. Fat phobia is very real. And it shows up in so many different contexts. But, as I've been reflecting for myself and thinking about, how is it that I look at myself and how is it that I see myself as a person and make sure that that answer to that question isn't influenced by, society and body trends, which, by the way, I'm not perfect, and it's something that I think I will always be asking myself and forever evolving on that. But, if we're saying that in the society that we live in, that to be a person who is fat, it means XYZ about yourself, then we're also saying, to be a thin person, it means XYZ about yourself. And I think that association, it's really harmful. I think we should be able to let people answer that question about, who they are as a person and how they move in this world without that influence. And I think, there is, now that this body trendness has come back into fashion, and the body positivity movement will be on shaky grounds just because of the fact that this trend of being thin is back in. And I keep saying the word, body positivity. I know that there's also body neutrality and the whole idea of just, being accepting your body for the things that it can do, regardless of, there's no pressure to love yourself. But I think even body neutrality in this era of thinness is also on shaky grounds, because I think if we really, regardless of body positivity, if we were really all in with body neutrality, I really don't think that Ozempic would be popping off the way that it is right now. I don't think it would be as trendy. And so I think, even body neutrality is on shaky grounds right now. And I think if we just don't even want there to be any extreme trends with bodies and just let bodies be bodies, we need to get so for real and so deep about what health actually means. Because, as I've said before on the show, time and time again, that these systems do not act in isolation, even the way that we view health is very much caught up with the systems of power and privilege, and the way that health is tied in with capitalism, the way it's tied in with whiteness / blackness, the way that it's tied in with the way that we view race, and the way that health is tied in with our class system. I think if we want to not have trends around our bodies, we need to get so for real about what health means in the context of those systems. And when you kind of, even for yourself, if you think about health and how it is associated with all these systems, it does have a profound impact on how you then look at these trends and how you look at yourself. And every single time I've swallowed that very easy pill of, this restricted view of health, I always ground myself by looking at, what health means and how it interlinks with all of these different systems. And once I kind of have that conversation with myself, I don't know, the empathy and grace that I have for my body is amazing. And the way that it's a lot easier. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in doing this, but the way that it's a lot easier to say, hey, I'm a fat person, and just let it be that, just a neutral description of who I am. It's honestly really eye-opening. Because if I think back to when I did live in a smaller body, it didn't change how my loved ones loved me. It didn't change how I thought about myself. I think I love myself more now than when I did back then. I think when I was living in a thinner body, and the context of me living in a thinner body is I was going through mad health issues. My chronic fatigue was really just popping off, and I didn't know it was chronic fatigue back then. But my chronic fatigue was popping all the way off, and I just lost a bunch of weight, and the response to me being tinier, it how before I was talking about how extremeness, instead of it encourages more vanity, and as opposed to more empathy and curiosity, it just fed that vanity within myself. And so I think really understanding what health means, and understanding what health means in the context of our systems, I think that will be quite life-changing for our society. But I think as a collective, I'm not too sure if we have the skills and the honesty to have that really uncomfortable conversation. But I think next episode, I'll be getting into health in the context of our systems. So stay tuned for that. But thank you so much for tuning into this kōrero. And now that you've listened to this, just notice how this new trend of thinness and this other trend of using the language of health and the language around health to make, which is just the body thinness movement, but in disguise. Just notice how it shows up in your life. It's actually wild. But thank you for tuning into this episode of Headscarves and Good Yarns, and catch you for the next one.
Thank you for tuning in into another episode of Headscarves and Good Yarns. To keep spinning the yarns, let us know your thoughts. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Headscarves and Good Yarns, or email us at headscarvesandgoodyarn@gmail.com.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.